Hello and welcome to Beyond the Point podcast with me, Ali Christensen. I'm curating the content I wish I had had as a dancer and creating strong, healthy, thriving dancers for the future. Not only am I your host and ex-professional dancer, but I own Align Fitness here in Huntington Beach, California, and I'm the creator of online courses for dancers such as lower body flexibility and turnout for dancers. Before we jump into our podcast guest today, I want to remind you that our applications for the Ambassador Program are still open as of today. So make sure that you have applied if that's something you're interested in. I am loving hearing all of your guys' goals and the ways that you're ready to take on 2020 and make big changes in your dancing, your technique, your strength, and wanting to apply how I work with dancers into your life. I'm so excited to see so many people who are ready to make that change. So if that's you, jump onto Instagram, put your application in. The applications will be closing soon. So get yours in before that window closes. Now, our guest on today's podcast is Maeghan McHale, and I am so happy to share this interview. We really dove into a couple deeper topics about support systems, how to create them versus being born into them. We talked about her training and how she's ended up where she didn't think. She ended up in companies that she didn't train for. She's ended up in amazing possibilities. Now a judge for YAGP, a top-rated choreographer, and so many great opportunities have come her way because of her ability to say yes to her long-term goals and figure it out as she goes through. I love that, and that's something that I'm working so hard to be part of my daily decisions is seeing the big picture and being open to how the path is going to get there. By saying yes to the big picture, I will figure out the little minutia on the way there. And she has done that with her dance career, and she is sharing it all here on the podcast today. So without any more hesitation, let's jump into today's interview. So today I have Maeghan McHale with me all the way from Chicago, and I am so excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on, Maeghan.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this. So
yeah,
can't wait to have a little.
I know. So I'm gonna let you kind of introduce yourself. But I was excited to have Maeghan on because as I've actually heard about you through some students in choreography and YAGP. And then I stumbled upon your Instagram a while ago and I was like, oh, I know who this is. And as I've been following and we got to chat, I knew that you were someone I wanted to come on and share some of your insights and just experiences as a dancer, a teacher, a judge, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna let you jump in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I have a dancing family. My older sister danced, so I pretty much followed in her footsteps. I was the epitome of the younger sibling that would come into the studio in the middle of class, completely embarrass her.
Of course.
That's what we're supposed to do. And my mom was like, okay, my kid's got a lot of energy and she looks like she's interested in dance. So let's try it and see what happens. So that was pretty much my beginning into the whole dance scene and really learning to love every single minute of it. I spent a lot of my time in the studio, went to school, and then pretty much right after school, it was one of those, you change in the car, you run to the studio, you stop at and get a bite to eat, and then you dance all day. And that was pretty much my life for my entire younger years. Went to an arts high school in Maryland, went to Baltimore School for the Arts. Totally thought I was going to be a bunhead, thought that was going to be my dream, my ultimate goal. I had even gone to the Kirov Academy in Washington, D.C. and started taking really arduous ballet classes and trying to train with the best and do that kind of stuff. So after I graduated high school, I moved straight to New York City, got on a Greyhound bus.
Oh my gosh.
My mom was like, good luck.
Yeah. Were your parents supportive of that?
Very much so. It's funny because I remember vividly the day going. And of course, I'm crying and I don't want to go. I'm really scared. And my mom's like, you've got this. You're fine. You're going to be great. And she's like, just think about it. It's not even a 3-hour bus drive away from where we are. So you're in good hands. It's nothing to be scared of. And she was just like totally positive Polly about it. And I was like, all right, well, if she's good with it, let's,
if she thinks
going.
I can do it.
Yeah. So I moved there. I actually started with Dance Theater of Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
I was on their scholarship program, trained there for a while. I did move up into their, at the time, they had Dancing Through Barriers ensemble with a few of my favorites with Levine Naidoo and Tyrone Brooks. And they really helped me continue some really great training. And it was some really great years I had there. Decided in the middle of all of that ballet was not what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I'd grown up a competition kid and I'd done the tap jazz and all that fun stuff. And I was like, you know what? I want to find something different. Wasn't sure if it was going to be musical theater, concert dance. I wasn't really sure. So I was kind of in the middle of figuring all that out. And so I ended up going to Steps on Broadway and did their scholarship work study, night shift, cleaning studios.
You've lived the New York dancer life. My goodness.
I really have.
This is exactly what it was. What was this, like 10 years ago that you were doing this?
Oh, probably even longer. I graduated high school back in 99. So
yeah,
this was pretty much like the life of a city dancer at that time and trying to make it work. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So in the middle of figuring all this out, I did the work study. And then my sister at the time had gotten a piece into Jazz Dance World Congress. It was the Capizio, Leo's competitive event. That's what it was. And one of her dancers ended up not being able to go. So at the last minute, doing the sisterly thing, she was like, please help me out. I have this piece going into this choreography competition and I need a dancer. And I was like, sure, I'm not really doing anything anyway. So why not? Let's try it. We went, at the time it was in Buffalo, New York. Went to this, they had classes, they had touring companies from around the world that put on performances. They had the competitive event. They had all this stuff. And that was my first experience seeing Giordano Dance Chicago. And I'll never forget it. They were doing Ron DeJesus's Pray, one of their very physical athletic pieces that they do in the company. And I saw that piece and I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, how do I get there? What do I have to do to make this happen? So in knowing that and figuring out like that was the next thing I wanted to do, it was a running joke for a while. I auditioned 4 times. Yeah, 4 times. That's a thing. It happens.
More than you think.
Yeah, exactly.
People, I think dancers think that it's like one and done. Like if you don't make it that one, then you're not a dancer. It's like, no, people audition for the same companies over and over and over. And it's sometimes they make it like you did. And sometimes they don't.
It's multiple times. And even throughout your professional career, you still, go on auditions. And even though you have a professional background, it still doesn't happen as easily. So you never know. Mm-hmm. So I auditioned 4 times. Finally, at the last Jazz Dance World Congress I ended up going to, I was offered a scholarship for the school at the time to study at the school. So I was like, okay, it's something. Got to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. So started studying school program. I did that for about a year. I worked my way up to the second company, the G2s. And then finally from the second company, and still had to audition, even though I was in the second company, still had to go through the audition process of getting into the company. And I was one of the lucky ones, paying my dues, put my time in, and I spent 13 seasons in the main company. So it was an adventure. It was quite a journey. And we always think that we have this like path of this is exactly what I want to do and exactly where I want to go. And I started out thinking ballet was what I wanted and the ultimate thing. And then turns out, things change. You choose a different path, and I look at what I was able to accomplish. and kind of switching gears a little bit. I'm like, wow, this actually turned out for the best. So you never know. There's opportunity out there where you're not really looking for it. So
I love that, because I feel like most of the great things that I consider great, or that have been the next steps in my life, have come from things that I didn't expect. Like you said, I was trained as a ballerina, and there was probably no thought that you would ever end up in a jazz company or a repertoire company that did such a big variety. I have so many friends that have done that, and I now expect that. I'm like, you can do it, whoever it is. If you have done a style that, you know, your whole life, and you think, I can't break into that, it's totally possible. I have several friends, and I keep hearing stories from people like you that are trained in classical ballet. When I was in Israel, there was a girl that had never done anything except ballet, and she had this long, tall, lanky, beautiful body. And within a year, her body not changed as in it got bigger or fatter or whatever, but just it changed. And she actually got a job with the contemporary jazz company that we were there with. And it was like, I would have never pegged you as that person that would have gotten the job, because she didn't even know what parallel was when she walked into this program. So if you're a dancer that feels like, I can't do that, I can't go in that class, I can't do that thing, because you've never done it before, that's so not true. It's not true.
Not true at all. Yeah, I am a firm believer in, and I'm all about, like, you really have a goal and something you want to go for, by all means, you do everything you can to do it. But sometimes you have to kind of look inside yourself and say, is this really working? And is this like my true passion as to what I want to do? And is it fulfilling? Mm-hmm. And at that time, I really just, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And so when I was offered that one chance to say, okay, try do this, go here and see this, that experience, it was life-changing. It really was. And if you can, like, just go for it and trust in yourself, that choice is a good one. Follow through with it. Because sometimes, like I said, you never know. The best things come from the one opportunity you thought you would never decide to go to.
Yeah. So, do you remember some of the internal dialogue you were having at that time when you were transitioning or realizing that that wasn't exactly what you wanted to do? And then when you got that opportunity that probably seemed a little scary to dive into?
Yeah, at first I was upset with myself because, and this sounds silly and ridiculous, but I was upset with myself because I almost kind of felt like a failure, because I was like, you know, this is what I've been training for my entire life, and this is what, you know, I thought I was going to do. Mm-hmm. So I was a little kind of down in the dumps, so to speak, with that. But then, you know, literally going to the Just Dance World Congress and exposing myself and opening my eyes, taking the blinders off a little bit, and realizing there is more out there than just one avenue of dance, and that it's just as fun, just as fulfilling, just as, you know, challenging, exciting as it would have been to try to continue doing something that, you know, as much as we fight for, sometimes just isn't meant to be. So once I got that experience and the whole whirlwind of the last audition in Chicago, and getting the scholarship, I'd never forget it, because my sister was here with me at that one. My mother wasn't. And I'll never forget it, because right after I was offered the scholarship, my sister and another friend of mine and I jumped in a cab. Like, she literally, like, called me, like, at the end of one of the classes. I saw her, like, waving in the back of the room. And she's like, come. And I was like, okay. We jumped in a cab. We started driving around the city. It was beautiful because it was like summer in Chicago. It was gorgeous. So that was already like, oh, wow, this is really nice. Drove around the city, started looking at apartments, found one. Wow,
straight from the audition?
Straight from the last class. And my sister, like, even helped, like, co-sign for the apartment and everything.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
We get in the cab, we call my mom, and I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm moving to Chicago. And she's like, what is going on? She's like, not that I don't expect this from you, but like, this is great.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You're like, Mom, I already have an apartment. I'm moving here. Like, we're good. I got a job.
So literally went back to New York, packed up all my stuff. And it was sad. I mean, it was kind of sad because I had built such a life there and made such great friends. And I still, to this day, every time I go back to the city, I always meet up with as many people as I can, say hi and take class and all that good stuff. But packed up, we made I think it was like 13-hour drive from New York City to Chicago. Yeah.
I think of everything being close. On the West Coast, everything is so spread out. So when I look at the map on the East Coast, I'm like, oh, you guys are so close to each other. But it's not. I realize that. Yeah. But it's farther than I think it's going to be.
It was a trek. It was definitely a drive. If I remember correctly, I think we drove through the night. So it started like early evening in New York and then made it through the night the next day into Chicago, and jumped right in, unpacked, tried to get my apartment set up a little bit. And then not that far after, I think we started classes at Giordano. So it was definitely a whirlwind. Very exciting.
Very, very exciting. Before we like keep going into that Chicago chapter, I'm thinking about everything that you did leading up to moving to Chicago. You said you went to Baltimore School of the Arts. You were at Cura for a while, Dance Theater of Harlem. You were working at Steps. I'm sure you had other small jobs that were coming in. How did you make those transitions and balance? Because that's a lot of stuff happening, and I'm assuming a pretty short amount of time. And I think you had said, it was a silly thought at the time, but a little bit of failure popped in to your brain. Yeah. When you were making those transitions from one school to the other, or one location to the next, did you find yourself thinking, oh, well, that didn't work out. I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll try this. Or was it very much like, okay, this is the next step. I'm excited. I'm making that. I'm choosing to take that step. Or did it feel like, did it feel like maybe you were dragging yourself from one thing to the next? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's hard because that word balance is still to this day, like, such a hard thing to accomplish, both mentally and physically and everything else. I definitely don't think it was like dragging myself into something. I knew in some form, some way I wanted to dance, and however I could figure out how to make that possible, I was a very determined young lady. And however I could figure out how to make that happen in a way that would make me happy, I was willing to do. I think you have to be open to any and all possibilities. And also having a great support system, my family especially, and friends that I've had throughout the years, being very encouraging, I think was key for me, really being able to accomplish all of those transitions in between. I think that was kind of the icing on the cake, so to speak, because otherwise I think without those few things along the way, I think it would have been difficult to try to take on by myself, especially in those formative years, because you're still trying to figure everything out. And having that guidance there for me, especially with my sister and my mom. My sister, already kind of being in the dance scene, had also wanted to be a professional dancer. And my mom, like, always being like, you've got this, like my cheerleader in the corner all the time. So I think that that especially was the best thing I could have had at that time, figuring everything out. So
yeah, I think that support system is so key. And if you're somebody who doesn't have a support system, I want to encourage you that you can find it. You can create it, is what I should say. You can create it. You said if family was a big part of it for you, but friends. And I think that, I think it still happens quite a bit that choosing to pursue something in the arts ends up being looked down on by some people. And I know from experience, having quite a few friends who have kind of made, like, cut ties with their family over this, them wanting to go into the arts and follow a passion and a drive that they have, and their parents saying, no, you need to do a job that makes you this salary or that has these benefits and whatever, and them saying, well, I'm going to go.
Right.
That's something I can't imagine having to go through, because I haven't had to make that cut or tie, but I have watched them. I have been part of families that have been adopted, that have supported other dancers, people, whoever you are, that are, my age or younger or older. And I can say now I have a couple younger people who are in my life who are kind of in that stage where I feel like they're drawn towards me because I am a support system for them. And that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like that. And I look back and say, if I could have been younger and I was in that spot, I would want to find friends that are the people just like your sister and your mom that say, you got this, you can do this.
Yeah.
I would want to find people who are a little bit older, who can maybe shed a little bit of wisdom on the years of things that are also got my back. And, finding people that even who aren't in the dance world, who create that support system for you, it can be there. And then you can have the same support and experience that it sounds like you had without having those blood ties. You can create the family without the blood.
Well, and also realizing that we're all in the same boat. As much as the portrayal of it being, cutthroat and so serious. And I mean, yes, it is. There's a healthy competitiveness to it, but we also can put that aside and sit down and commiserate and talk about it as fellow artists. And I had a few of those friends, especially when I was in New York, that we would just be like, what is happening? How do I figure this out? What are you doing? Or how does this? So that way, it's all a learning process. So whatever you can take from each person and their own struggle and what they're trying to figure out, and also, again, being there for them at the same time, I think was also really key to realizing that it's not just you. You're not the only one that's having to figure this all out. There's quite a few of us out there trying to still figure it out. So.
Yeah, I think we're all, in some ways, we're all still trying to figure it out, whether it's in dance or not. And I know something I was just talking with someone about this, about finding the compassion for other people, talking about that skill, because it really is a skill that we have to keep building on and practicing. And one of the best things that I feel assists me to build my compassion is just listening. And I'm a better listener than I am talker, and my friends can tell you that. But there's people who talk a lot, and talking is fine. But if you don't flip to the other side and put those little listening ears on, like the little kids say, and really just what would it be like to be in this person's shoes? I think that's a great compassion building exercise, and it assists. If you are somebody that's had those ties broken with your family, say you're the dancer, we'll assume, since you're listening here, you being able to start practicing your compassion for your family that has not supported you, that's a big tool that will continue to bless you, I think, as we go. And it's definitely not, I wouldn't say it's an easy tool sometimes, especially when we talk about family. But that compassion will assist you to build those ties around you, and then forgive the past ties that aren't doing so well right now. So anyways.
Yes, that was very well said.
That was a deep jump in there, but I would love what you were talking about with support. So see, we can talk about whatever we want on this podcast, because we're going beyond the point. See, I named it for a reason. So just thinking about those moments and those support, and you said you were very driven and committed, and you were that kid that's like, I'll do whatever it takes to get where I want to go. Getting into a company, did you say you were with the second company or how long were you with the second company? You said 13 years with the whole company.
So I was I performed with the main company for 13 seasons.
Okay.
Before that, and it's hard because it kind of,
they blend together.
I was one of the ones that and timing of things seemed to work well in my favor. I was definitely one of the lucky ones. So like, as I was in the scholarship program, at that time we were offered to perform in the big Harris show. They have like a fall and spring performance at the Harris Theater for music and dance. And they offered at that time, the G2s, the second company, to perform. However, at that point I was in the scholarship program and they needed another person to fill in to perform with the G2s. Mm-hmm. And so I was offered that opportunity. After that opportunity was when they saw something. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, okay, well, maybe we should have her in the second company and out of the scholarship program. So that was like mid-year of, I think, my second year. Mm-hmm. And then I was in the second company for the rest of that year. And then the following year, so basically they have like, you are an understudy for each company dancer. Since there's 5 females and 5 males, you basically had one each. Mm-hmm. And I was understudying one of my dearest friends, I think, and she was a beautiful dancer and absolutely loved her. And she, unfortunately, at the beginning of the season, we had a new choreographer come in and she had injured herself in the process of learning it. So me being her understudy, I was pretty much thrown into the fire, had to learn almost all of the rep, because they were getting ready to go on a European tour to Germany, wow. I think for like 2 weeks, had to get like passport and everything. I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, that was I was still a G2, but ended up performing almost that entire season. I think I did the entire season minus one show that they did. So again, it kind of blended in because that season, that was when I still had to audition for the main company, because they were looking for her replacement. So again, even though I was her understudy and even though I had performed the entire season, still had to go through the audition process.
That's rough. That's rough. Yeah. I mean, I think it happens in a lot of companies. As we were saying in the beginning, it's a thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing. That's a good way to say it. Katie Rafferty was on the podcast a couple months ago, and she's also a dancer with Giordano. And she had a similar story, and I think it happens a lot. So that
it happens a lot more than you think. Yeah. Yep. It's definitely, it's part of the process. Mm-hmm. And so, and there were a few of us that had been all really going for the same role. Like, even though I was the understudy, again, like Katie, totally can put those two stories together. There were a few of us that were all auditioning as a G2 at that time. And there were some that wanted other dancers and some that wanted me. It was a total. So it was a true like audition process of figuring out how this was all going to work. But, and then that was when I started my actual contractual, performance career with them.
Which
is
very exciting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, 13 years in Chicago. How did you, that's a lot of years to talk about. So, but how did you end up where you are now from that jump from, from company member, we're going to jump forward 13 years and now you're here in life. How did that transition happen?
I've always, within the whole, my whole career of dancing, I've always taught, I've always choreographed, especially having, again, my sister, she owns a dance studio back home. And her whole life was basically like traveling, teaching, choreographing. And I really learned from her. And even throughout like dancing at Giordano's, we would do a lot of outreach programs, a lot of master classes. And so a lot of times, like especially in the beginning when I first started, because I really wanted to learn all about it, I would be the one that would like raise my hand and be like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And they're like, okay, sure, let's let her try it and see what happens. Which I think was one of the best things I could have done for myself. So that way you learn to make those connections. You learn how to see how this whole other side of it works. So I knew I wanted to somehow, after my dancing career, would be done, I wanted to still stay within the dance world. So a lot of it has been just kind of keeping that foundation growing and building throughout the 13 years I've been here. So it was an easier transition for me instead of getting to that point of, okay, now I'm done dancing. What am I going to do? So it made it a little simpler for me to kind of carve a new path. I'm still like figuring out exactly how I want to continue this. I enjoy teaching, love choreographing, love going and meeting new people and making new connections and hearing stories and different perspectives and all that stuff. So, and lots of, again, guidance and information from people that have already gone through this process. So it's, so far going really well. Can't complain.
That's good. I feel like you've kind of adopted, whether you meant to or not, the just say yes philosophy of life, which I love. I love it. I think that is the best advice for myself. Is I heard a business coach person said once, like, if you have an appointment here in West Coast and you have something the next day in East Coast and you don't know how the heck you're going to do it, you just say yes and then you figure it out. And that's not to overcommit yourself, because I want to honor all my stuff. I want you guys to honor all your commitments, but there are so many possibilities. And when you're committed to the outcome and you are open to how the pathway is going to get you there, I think magical stuff happens and you get in those opportunities. Like you said, raising your hand and saying like, yeah, I'll teach. And they're like, okay, we'll give it a try. But you being willing, and I'm sure even if you were excited, there was a little bit of nervousness in that. I use that as a guide, and I have to remind myself constantly, including this week, there was something that I felt a little nervous about. I was like, ooh, I don't really want to do that. I was like, that probably means you should do it. That's that's a little spot in you that knows that's the spot I should be growing in. And that's where those little jumps come from, and having your support system and making those jumps, saying yes and asking for assistance. You're going to move through those fears really quickly, and then they're not going to be fears, and you can excel at whatever you're doing.
I think being confident in yourself, knowing that if you can just make that first little effort to saying, okay, sure, let's try this. Let's make it happen. It's funny just because in the beginning of me trying to start this with podcast with you, I'm also in the process of creating a new piece, starting, I think, week after next. And I was already getting emails of, what's your time limit? What's your thought process? What's your title? What's your this? And we get caught up in so much of trying to, and you're like, okay, I see you. I hear you. I acknowledge you. I know that I do have to take care of this, but at this time, I'm going to take care of this. And then when I'm done with this, I'll put all of my energy into this and make this happen. So like, know that even though you are signing up for all of these things, which is great, I think if you can really do that, have that be your way of challenging yourself, especially because it is a little nerve-wracking at times. You're like, how am I going to get through this? But if you can do that for yourself, it is, like you said, the best way I've found that I have grown to figure out how, as a human, because we have to remember we're also human at times, how we can approach this in a way to where it's not just, we're bettering ourselves and then bettering our art because of what we're producing in that moment. So I think that it's key to really trying to keep it growing, keep it moving.
Us choosing to stretch ourselves in those decisions that feel uncomfortable, and you know that it's just your head. So we're not talking about putting yourself in like an unsafe situation, but the ones that it's just your head saying, oh, you're not good enough to do that. That might be scary. You might fail. Whatever those voices are, those are the ones that when you can push through them, that art and that vulnerability comes out. And then that's how you tie in our, ego and head into the artistic and creative side of our brain, I think. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you've kept going now, you actually judge for YAGP. That's part of what you do. How did you get into that? How did you get into that? And I love that you've ended up here because I think it's a great place to be be part of the organization. But I feel like a lot of your yeses led up to this opportunity.
It did. So, back to, again, family dance situation. My sister actually started taking her students to YAGP quite a few years ago. And she, of course, they're very focused on classical variations and that side of it, but also has the contemporary side of it as well. And her, again, knowing how very uncomfortable I am at choreographing, decided to challenge me and say, I need a piece for these kids to take to YAGP and I need you to do it. Like, not even giving me the option. She's just like, okay, so you have to come do this. And I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. Let's make it happen. So that was my introduction to YAGP, was basically working with my sister's students, choreographing for them. And YAGP was very gracious and welcoming of the work that I was doing with the kids there. And they acknowledged my work quite a few times, and especially as the choreography side of it. And not this past year, but the year before, at the Nationals in New York, they had actually awarded me the choreographer award there with great opportunities. And thank you. I really appreciate it. So I think that was their way of saying welcome to the family, because soon thereafter they had asked me to start judging and teaching some of the classes, and especially here in Chicago, and trying to, incorporate my style, my scene, contemporary dance to a lot of the classical dancers that come through the competition. So they've been very, very nice to me, I have to say, and how they have welcomed me and treated me the past 2 years. So
that's amazing. We just had YAGP here in LA this last weekend, and it's in San Diego in 2 weekends, I think. So everyone here is, all my clients and students are in major, 2 weeks before prep mode.
Competition season. Everybody's getting ready.
Yes, it's all over. We're just, right here in LA right now. But all of them are doing contemporary and classical variations. And a lot of the students that I work with just right here locally, there's a lot of very good ballet schools here. So they really have that strong technical side. And then from my observation, it's the contemporary that is probably more challenging for them. And, depending on the choreography also. As a judge, what are you looking at knowing? Because this competition started as a classical ballet competition. I don't know when contemporary solos started coming into the mix. Maybe you do. But how do we look at those two sides of it? And I know they're judged separately, but do you have any advice for those dancers that are either stronger in one than the other and are trying to make the crossover or the transition? Tell us your words of wisdom.
Yeah, no. When YAGP, when I remember first going to the competition, it was, like you said, very much classical. Like that was, and quite honestly, some of the competitors that I saw coming and young students, 16 to 18 years old, especially, I was like, wow, these kids have really got some great potential.
They're great
should be
people.
Professional dancers now. And at the time, I believe when it first started, they were offering, the ABT studio company contracts to those that I think won the Grand Prix, or that had placed high within the competition. I think Kevin McKenzie was doing that at the time, which was great. I mean, hello, are you kidding me? What an amazing opportunity that is. So it definitely was. It started out more towards the classical side, and it did have the contemporary aspect to it. But I think as the competition has grown, and also as times have changed.
Yes.
I think that they are now recognizing that the contemporary side of it is just as important as the classical side of it, which has been great to see, that they've broadened their horizons on that part of it. I think that we're, especially being a contemporary judge, we're seeing the classically trained dancers trying to open themselves, be a little bit more vulnerable, and are doing a great job at it, are succeeding really well. I mean, a lot of from my point of view and coming from a dancer's point of view too, is, you know, I just love to see you move, like get lost in it for a little bit, you know, release and suspend a little more, take it that extra little step further, have confidence, take a risk, you know, because we're very so much ingrained in ourselves as classically trained dancers that you have to, you know, hit that perfect line and hold that, you know. And so as the contemporary side of it is, I'm always saying, just release a little bit more in your body and, you know, let go a little bit and really enjoy the ride. And slow and steady, we're definitely making that progress there and reaching out to those kids and it's great because I get emails and feedback from some people that are saying, thank you for, you know, such great words that you were giving on the score sheets. And, you know, we love your feedback and how it's a little mixture of positive along with some really good criticism. And again, remembering it's one person's opinion. So, you know, we're just trying to offer a little bit of our knowledge to you and trying to help you succeed in this. So also taking it with like a grain of salt, you know, so seeing how you can apply it to what you're learning and doing within your studio, within your teachers. So, you know, it's a learning process and trying to see how you can, because it's delicate at times. So, you know, in my generation, our training, I think, was a little bit more, harsh isn't the word, but a little more strict. You know, it's changed, from what I remember having, like our Russian teachers and our, you know, the way that it was, the atmosphere, the environment in the studio to what it is now. So really making sure that, how we deliver, what we're trying to say to these kids is heard in a positive light. So that way it's not, so to diminish what they're trying to do. So, you know, we're making strides. We're getting there.
Do you feel, I feel like I haven't seen the competition this year yet, but I was at one of them last year, and I was so happy the contemporary was so long. The section had grown from even just the year before. But what I noticed is the style was very similar, that all the choreography was very similar. What do you feel about that, being a contemporary dancer, also knowing, you know, that you're in that judging position? Do you think that it's going to continue to evolve into a wider variety of style, or do you think that as part of this competition, there's just kind of a certain style and that's what you're going to bring to the competition?
There's a lot. There's a lot.
I know. That was like 7 questions in one.
There's a lot, and there's a lot that you want to, again, it's delicate and you want to try to touch on as much as possible.
Yeah.
I do think right now we are in a time of, this is what is being offered for contemporary, and this is what you're going to see, because it's almost kind of become the expected or the fad, so to speak, of what we are categorizing as contemporary. I am hoping that it will evolve into a lot more than what we are seeing. Not taking anything away from the dancers. I mean, the things that they are doing now is extraordinary. I
look at it like when you audition for a certain company, they have a certain style, and you go into the audition and you are going to dance that style. So, you know, if you're looking at contemporary companies, if we're looking at Lines Ballet, and then we're looking at the Netherlands, and then we're, you know, everyone's going to have a different style, and you're going to have to kind of tweak your body and your repertoire to audition for that. So that is the way I look at YGP. So I don't mean it as a bad thing that it has a specific style, but we were talking about how it evolves, and I'm curious over the next 10 years if that will continue, that style will continue to expand of what we're judging, or if it will continue to be like you're at this company, you're auditioning for this. This is the style we expect, and we reward you for being good at this style, which is not a bad thing because it's just another opportunity. Just like when you go to a summer program, you're going to dance this way, and then you go to this and you're going to dance that way. That's the way I look at it, at least.
It is. And so I'm, again, these dancers are doing things that I'm in the back of my mind going, well, I'm very happy that I don't have to do these things because I don't think I could do them. The training and what they are going through in order to accomplish these things it's insane. And kudos to them for doing what they're doing. But I am also hoping that artistically it will evolve from where it is right now.
I think that's a really great way to say it.
Yeah, I think that we've upped the game from what it was that it started. And now that we've kind of hit this plateau of this is where we're at right now, I'm hoping there will be another big jump from here to whatever it is that we create for the next few years to come in order to keep it growing. Yeah.
Well, I think as the ballet companies become more diverse in their repertoire, which is what's happening right now. These super classical companies all of a sudden are busting out contemporary rep.
And I love it.
I love it too. I absolutely love it too. So as we were saying, and as I hope all our dancers know who are listening, you have to have such a wide variety of genres under your belt. Classical being the main one. If you're gonna, I think the main one I do, no matter what style you're doing. We've talked a lot about ballet today, but that applies to every other style that we're looking at. And I think as those companies continue, especially the big ones that are just the ones that everyone knows, as they continue to push their rep envelope, it's going to require the trickle down to expand. And that's just that's what happens in the world. Like the big guns make the shifts, and then the trickle happens and everyone makes a change, and then it happens again and again. So I think it will happen, and it'll just become a natural progression as it has been with the ballet scene to, keep pushing and having these ballerinas be so versatile and strong. Yes. That's what I love. I love a strong ballerina. Oh my gosh.
I love the strength. Like if I can see you and it's great because you can see the transition from like having that soft ethereal, turning immediately into like strong, feisty with a little bit of spice to it. I'm like, I love it. Just give me all of it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I really enjoy seeing. And it takes you on that ride. You're following along with them. So you kind of feel exactly what they're feeling. So I'm all about it. Just keep it growing and keep it moving. So I'm hoping that will be the direction it goes in.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah. Do you have any, we're coming up on our time, which goes so fast, but
I know.
we're in the thick of YAGP right now. That's, so if you're listening to this right as it launches and releases, we're right in the middle of it. You've had some great words of wisdom for all the dancers and parents. I hope that you guys share this with your other dancers and parents and loved ones, because this is like firsthand knowledge of what they're looking for as you're going into this competition. And I do think that it's not just YAGP that we're looking at. Whatever you're doing, this, we're talking to a dance expert right now who is in that frame of mind. So do you have any other words of advice for dancers or parents as they're going into their competition season right now?
Well, firstly, I appreciate you saying expert. I don't know if I'm necessarily.
I think so. You are mentoring the future generation, so I'm going to call that an expert.
Those are very kind words, and I greatly appreciate that. I think that more than anything, as long as you stay true to yourself, going in, acknowledging, especially with competition season upon us, going in and knowing that you have a purpose, that you keep that confidence, you keep that dedication, the passion, the love for dance, showing your strengths, and also acknowledging, like, we all have weaknesses. We're all, we have that one thing that we're really great at, and we also know that we have that one thing that we continue to work on day after day, hour after hour. Keep going, keep doing it. Any extra hour you have, if flexibility is something you need to work on, find a corner somewhere and start stretching. Feet that you are really working on, find a couch or something to put your feet under and keep stretching. Get those TheraBands out. Like, it's constant. It really is. Even as you're a professional dancer, the work, there's still always something to learn.
Yeah.
The work is always going to be there. Just remember that there is a reason why you do this, and it's because of the love and the passion that you have for dance. I've said this to all the dancers that I've ever worked with. This is not to be some famous rock star that lives in a mansion somewhere on a hill with, multi-million dollars and, everything. It is deep down because we love this, and our life would not be fulfilled if it wasn't a part of us. And I stand true to that every day.
Yeah.
Dance is honestly my first love.
Yeah.
It really is. That's just how I feel about it. And so if you can keep that going through any difficult time or through the good times, all of that, remember, in the end, it will all pay off, because that light at the end of the tunnel, it shines pretty bright when you get there.
I love it.
Just keep going.
I love it. And I was thinking as you were talking that it's not about the short-term goals. It's about the long-term. You have to keep that in mind. It's really easy to be like, oh, I want to do this triple pirouette, and then I'll be complete. And then my life will be complete. But I made it. As soon as you do that triple pirouette, you are going to be like, well, now I want to do 4, and now I want to do 5. And so knowing that the work is consistent and it's ongoing, and you said the light at the end of the tunnel, like I like that analogy, but also I feel like we're always still going towards that. And I don't mean that in a we're never happy way, but there's just always more. And if you keep that in mind and perspective and keep true to the work you're talking about, just knowing that it's part of you, and that's part of how you feed your passion is by the work that you put in daily. You're going to have a happy life if you can keep that in perspective. Yeah. It's when we are reaching for something and thinking, I'll be happy when, and then that's it. That's, the end of sentence. I'll be happy when. That's when I think our goals get short. That's when we stop supporting ourselves and our other friends and dancers. But if you can keep the work going, like you're saying, and keep that in perspective of this is part of your life, you're choosing to put the work in, and if you find the joy in the work, then that's when dance becomes feasible as a profession, I think, because we burn out pretty fast if you don't have that frame of mind, among others. So absolutely. Yeah. Awesome.
I wholeheartedly agree. That was great.
Maeghan,
very well said.
So great to talk to you. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time and sharing everything you've talked about today. This has been perfect for the time and season, and all of our listeners are going to be so excited to have this little nugget right now. Thank you so much.
I honestly can't thank you enough. I think this is a great opportunity that you're giving to all young dancers out there. I wish I would have had something like this when I was younger, to be able to hear this firsthand. I think it's just great for what is happening now in our dance world. And so I think that you offering this is just magnificent. So kudos to you for what you're doing. And I greatly appreciate you having me on. So this has been so much fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me and Maeghan today. It was such a fun interview. I'm inspired by her action and her yeses. I love all the yeses, and she just dropped quite a few nuggets of wisdom as we're going into our competition seasons. Take those up. If you are a parent, share this interview with your child. If you're a kid or a dancer, please take what she said. That was really, really great words of wisdom that she just dropped on you right there. So remember, as we're closing, that our applications for our ambassador program are going to be closing soon. So make sure you go check that out. Even if you're not sure what it is, go check it out. Look at the application, see if it's something that falls into line with your goals this year. And if you feel like the answer is yes, I want to hear from you. We're continuing with our guests next week, so make sure that you have hit the subscribe button on iTunes or Spotify so that you're going to get notified when the next episode drops. And I will see you all back here next week on Beyond the Point.